Good morning and welcome. I learned that sign last time. I'm Mayor Yvonne Spicer, and I am thrilled to be hosting the kickoff event for our statewide census here in Framingham, and I welcome you all to the great city of Framingham. This morning, we have a number of people from across the state that have come to kick this event off with us. And starting our state reps, I want to acknowledge them for being here. And also, our Sheriff Katusian is here, and also Representative of Senate President Karen Spilka's office is here, as well as our local city council members are here, and school committee members are here as well, and in addition to other leaders within our community. This is an event that is designed to remind us all that everyone counts, and for us to do our very best in making sure that happens. You know, earlier this year, my office established a complete count committee to make sure we communicate the importance of accurately counting everyone in the city of Framingham. And my job as chairperson of this committee is to make sure that we're doing everything we can to help in this process, to help our state, and more importantly, help our community receive the resources that we need. We're going to do our very best to ensure that the diverse and vibrant city of Framingham is set up for success long term. I'm honored that Framingham was selected to host this very important kickoff, and now I would like to welcome our Secretary of State, William Galbraith.
Good morning, and thank you, Mayor Spicer, so much for hosting us here in Framingham. You know, Framingham really is typical of so much of Massachusetts, and one of the reasons we selected Framingham for this meeting is that if you look around Framingham, you see all of the issues that we confront statewide. They have a university, they have a significant immigrant population, they have a diversity of both population and housing stock. All of the challenges that we're going to confront in Massachusetts as we approach the Census 2020. It's important to remember, and the reason we're here today is not because it's April Fool's Day, but rather because exactly 1 year from today will be Census 2020 Day, the day on which we mark where people stand in this country to be counted. And I've had the pleasure of handling this for Massachusetts for the 2 previous census efforts. And based on that experience, I can tell you, this is clearly going to be the most challenging effort that we've ever confronted. My partners in this effort, the Donahue Institute at the University of Massachusetts, believe, and I trust them, that there are 6.9 million persons in Massachusetts at the present time. That reflects a significant increase in our population. They have charted this over the last 10 years, and they've seen our population grow. In fact, we are one of the few states in the Northeast that has seen population increases. Now, there are multiple reasons for that. One of them is that we are a destination for not a lot of international immigrants. I'll be back to immigration in a moment. Another is that we have a very vibrant economy, an economy that has sustained itself during ups and downs. And I think while there's a lot of focus on the census effort when we discuss it on the issue of political representation, and that's extremely important, protecting our political representation, making sure that we're not shortchanged in that effort. I think it's equally important to talk about the importance to our economy of getting an accurate count on the census. As I said, we're all cognizant and proud of our economic achievements here in Massachusetts. But when you think about how we get to that status, how we protect that status, it's extremely important to consider what we're going to be getting from the federal government in terms of assistance over the coming decade. First and foremost, we want to think about education, the education assistance that we get. So many of our communities, our older communities, our urban communities, have challenging student populations. Populations that need assistance, populations that have benefited by any number of federal programs. We don't want to see those kids get shortchanged anywhere in Massachusetts. But to make sure that they're not shortchanged, we need to make sure the populations in their communities get counted. Another critical area where the federal government contributes to our economy, I think all of us just getting here today are cognizant of this, is transportation. Think of it. Every highway that's rebuilt, every public transportation system that continues to add lines and efforts, whether it's the extension of the Green Line in Cambridge, Somerville, or the extension of commuter rail to our cities and towns, is dependent upon federal assistance. And then there's the issue of public health. As a leader in the country in public health, because of the marvelous institutions we have here in Massachusetts, clearly we're cognizant of the role that the United States government plays in providing public health assistance. So the issue for us in Massachusetts is not simply protecting our political representation, and I might add that that applies even right down to the local communities that will be redividing their wards and towns and cities based upon the population figures that come from this census, but it's also about protecting our economy. So that's the issue. The challenge has never been greater. The challenge is first and foremost because clearly in Massachusetts, of that 6.9 million that I mentioned, 1 million of those persons are non-native born, and 500,000 may be legally present, 500,000 may not be documented. Making sure that all of those persons get counted is extremely important. Even if we are successful in the effort that we're making with other states right now to eliminate the so-called citizenship question from the census, let's not be deluded. It's still going to be challenging, as it always has been, to get non-citizens and persons who are in fear to respond. And the fear has never been greater. We have to be honest about that. There's no need to go into the reasons. It's simply a fact that getting people to answer the census questionnaire, especially if they're here with some degree of uncertainty, is going to be extremely challenging, but critical to our number, critical to making sure we get and actualize that 6.9 million figure that we're looking at. I want to speak briefly to the issues of how we're going to approach this problem. The first thing, and I think the major themes for today's meeting, is to identify populations that are at risk that might not be counted. And the second is to educate those people once they're identified. Identification is always challenging. Like I said, we are certainly a state of immigrants, and what's distinctive about our immigration patterns from other parts of the country is this. In other parts of the country, other states that have large immigrant populations, many of those immigrants all come from the same region of the world. They might all speak a different language in English, but it's the same language that's different. Not in Massachusetts. Our immigration patterns are remarkably diverse. People come from without the whole world. I can't say why, but I know it's true. And it's fascinating to me, I might add, that every 10 years when I do this, I discover new populations that we didn't know were there. And I do that by asking people. And I'll share with you just an example I had from Saturday. Saturday I was down in the city of Attleboro attending an event, and I spoke to the state legislator down there, Jim Hawkins, who's relatively new and had just been out campaigning last year. And I said to him, we were talking about the census and the challenges involved, and I usually wouldn't have thought of Attleboro as much of a destination for immigrant populations, based on my experience anyways. So I said to Jim, Jim, when you were out campaigning last year, did you come across any new populations you didn't know were there? He says, as a matter of fact, I did. I said, really? I said, who were they? He said, Egyptians. I said, there were Egyptians in Attleboro? Pardon my surprise, but it's true. And he went on to explain to me that recently a church had been acquired by a Coptic Egyptian population and had become a magnet for people to come into his city. He said, and he kept saying to me, they're really nice people. And I said, that's great. I said, are they citizens? He said, I don't think so. I said, how are we going to get them to answer the census? He said, I don't know. I said, thank you for telling me. And I ask the same question of people all the time. And it's not just about immigrants, it's also about other populations that may be vulnerable. Whether it's the homeless, I know we just discovered here this morning in Framingham, there's a significant homeless population that is going to be challenging to count. Or other groups of people who, for whatever reason, are difficult to count. So we have an enormous challenge ahead of us, a critical challenge for Massachusetts. This isn't simply a statistical exercise that we do to see how many people we have for boasting rights. This is a critical exercise, not only for our political future, but our economic future, and more important, the future of the people we all care about, our people. We can be proud of the diversity we have. We can be proud of the fact that we have so many institutions that service so many people. We can be proud of our economy, but to keep it sustained and growing over the next 10 years, this critical exercise must be successful. It is going to be challenging. We're going to be taking every opportunity we can, not only to identify people, but to educate them. And how are we going to do that? We're going to depend on people like you. People to reach out into your communities to identify the populations that are there and educate them. I'm going to be seeking, as I have in the past, assistance from the state legislature for a state expenditure to provide grants. We're going to be seeking, in addition, whatever support we can get from the federal government, and I'm encouraged with some of the information that has come to me just this morning that Mr. Baylor will speak to in a few minutes. These are all tools, but the critical tool is to reach out to people to explain to them why it's important. And it's a hard argument to make, but the answer, I think, lies in this. You tell a parent, whether they're an immigrant or not, that this is about your kid's education. You tell somebody who's concerned about what their future is economically, this is about your job. This is about the opportunity for you to be able to get to work, that there's going to be a public transportation system that supports you. You tell whatever it is necessary, whether it's education or healthcare, that this is about us. It's not about you or me or this group or that group, it's about us. Massachusetts has always been about us. We've always been a place that's been welcoming, that brings people here. The way we make progress and go forward is to convince people that it's about us and getting us to the next place, the next plateau. But I make no mistake, I have no illusion. There are solutions to this problem that I don't know the answer to yet. Maybe you do. And I'm going to be asking you not only for your assistance, but your help as we go forward over the next year. I'm confident that working together, using the resources we have as a state, we can be successful. I'm confident that no other state will make the effort that we're prepared to make. And I think with that effort, we can make sure that we count everyone that needs to be counted and make sure that we protect not only our political representation, but our economy and the place we all live and love. Thank you very much for your attention this morning. My pleasure to introduce Jeff Baylor. Jeff is the Regional Director for the Census Bureau for our region. We've been working closely with his division for some period of time now, identifying new addresses and correcting local address lists. The Bureau itself has faced a great number of challenges, both financially and otherwise. It's not an easy job, and I'm very much appreciative of him taking the time to be with us this morning. Jeff?
Good morning, everyone. Again, Jeff Baylor, Regional Director for the New York region, one of 6 regions we have across the country responsible for all activities related to the 2020 census. We cover all of Massachusetts, all the remaining New England states, New York, New Jersey, and Puerto Rico. And this is my 3rd census. I had the opportunity to work the 2000 census in Detroit, Michigan, the 2010 census in Dallas, Texas, and I can tell you in all my experience, no one rolls out a census event like the state of Massachusetts. Absolutely second to none. So I thank Secretary Galvin and his staff that have been nothing short of phenomenal, so thank you very much. And Mayor Spicer, this venue, thank you for hosting. What a beautiful place, so thank you very much. So I want to thank everyone here today, leaders in the community, the trusted voices, here to help us shape your future through the 2020 census. Today marks a countdown exactly 1 year away from Census Day, April 1st of 2020. And a successful census is easy to define. Counting everyone once, only once, and in the right place. Two things I want to highlight today that will help us get there. Two areas in which we need your help. First, we have jobs. Although the census is a national event, in order to be successful, it must be conducted at the local level, with local workers who understand and represent their communities. I can tell you that throughout Massachusetts, we'll be hiring field workers at a pay rate of $18 to $25 per hour, a great part-time job. We're also recruiting for full-time positions, supervisors, managers, and clerical positions to operate the 6 local offices across the opening this summer across the state. Plenty of opportunity, so come now and apply. www.2020census.gov/jobs. The website is live now, and we're also working with partners, conducting job fairs, making it easy for your community members to apply. Second, we need census ambassadors. We need trusted voices in every community, sharing the message that the census is safe, that it's easy, and that it's important. All your responses are private and confidential. Title 13 of federal law protects every piece of data we collect. That means we cannot release any information that identifies an individual or a household, period. We cannot share any information that we collect that would identify an individual or household with any federal, state, or local agencies, including law enforcement. So be assured, the census is safe. The census is easy. There are 4 ways to fill out your form. Online for the first time, as well as by phone. And for the first time, the census will be available in 12 non-English languages in both of those modes. In addition, if you prefer to fill it out on paper, you'll have that option as well. And finally, the 4th way we count people, the costliest operation we do in any census, sending census takers door to door to collect the very same information that you can complete online, over the phone, or on paper. So the census is easy. Finally, it's important. Think money. More than $675 billion of federal funding is disseminated every year. And recently, it estimated in 2016, the state of Massachusetts received over $23 billion of federal funding across the largest 55 programs. Programs like Medicaid, WIC, SNAP, the National School Lunch Program, health centers, Head Start, and many, many others. And think power, legislative boundaries, and congressional seats at stake. Yes, the census is important. Just remember, this is your census. We get one chance every 10 years to get it right. And I'm confident that by working together, we can achieve the most complete and accurate census possible for the state of Massachusetts. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeff. One of the challenges, like I said, is immigration, but also it's hard to find people who know the status of immigration issues in Massachusetts. We're gifted, I think, by the next speaker, who has agreed to be the chair of our statewide Complete Count Committee. Ava Malona has been the Chief Operating Officer of MIRA, Massachusetts Immigrants' Rights Association, for many years. She has a great knowledge of our state. She brings a remarkable enthusiasm to everything she does. And I'm so grateful for her for accepting this challenge and helping us navigate this very difficult area. It's my pleasure to introduce Ava Malona, the chair of our Complete Count Committee.
Good morning. Thank you so much, Secretary Galding, for the great honor, but also for being a wonderful secretary, and thank you for your vision and leadership. So join me in giving a big round of applause for our best secretary. I also wanted to thank Mayor Spicer for joining us, the fabulous mayor of Framingham, and it's so good to be in the wonderful city of Framingham in this beautiful room. Thank you to each and every one of you for being here. I am really, really grateful for the opportunity. Today it's a very important day for two reasons. First of all, we are making a statement together. Public officials at the state and local level, advocates, grassroots organizations, we are showing that we stand united and committed to ensure a fair and complete count in our great Commonwealth. We come from different backgrounds. We have different perspectives. We may belong to different political parties, but we all agree that every resident in Massachusetts must be counted next year. That's a powerful message. As we get into this campaign, we will ensure that we all are counted because we all matter. And whether we are white, brown or black, native-born or foreign-born, urban, suburban or rural, we're all in this together. In any one group, if any one group is undercounted, you heard from previous speakers that we all lose political representation. For every person we miss, we could lose $2,400 in federal funds per person. Do the math, the impact is $60 billion. And we all have a stake in this campaign. This brings me to the second point. Today we're launching a major undertaking, and we can't sugarcoat this. The 2020 census may be one of the toughest in our lifetimes. The federal administration has headed the question of citizenship, and their own experts warn that they would have chilling effects on immigrant communities. This is particularly a concern for Massachusetts, given that 1 in 6 residents is foreign-born. And as the Boston Foundation recently reported, our population is only growing because of immigrants. The native-born population continues to decline. So if we miss immigrants, refugees, and mixed-status households because of fear, we could have a significant undercount. We still hope that the Supreme Court removes the citizenship question, but some of the damage may be reversible. Especially when we recognize the current climate, many immigrants are afraid to call 911 or even to take their children to the doctor. Having someone from government to come to your door asking all sorts of personal questions, that's going to be terrifying if we don't prepare the households. The 2020 census will also be the first one done manually, electronically. For the digital native generation, that may be great, but for many people, it will be far more challenging than filling out the form, the paper form. More important, many people in lower income and rural households don't have good internet access, so filling out a form may not be feasible. And these are some populations that are hardest to count by enumeration because many of them live in multi-family houses and in hard to reach and hard to count areas. And in 2020, we'll have far fewer resources than in 2010. Massachusetts will only have 6 areas for census offices compared to 12 in 2020, and none west of Worcester. And I know some think Worcester is the far end of the state, but as someone who lives there, trust me, it's not even halfway point. Almost a quarter of Massachusetts residents, 1.6 million, live in hard-to-count census tracts. In 2010, with far fewer obstacles, the census still missed about 20,000 children in our Commonwealth. If we don't work hard to ensure a complete count, how many will we miss this time? But we can overcome these challenges by supporting trusted leaders to reach out to their neighbors, congregations, and communities. And that's the work that begins in earnest today. Grassroots organizations have built networks of trusted messengers in historically undercounted community. MIRA has over 200 partners across the state, and it's very committed to working hard to make sure that we have a successful 2020 census campaign. Today, I invite all of you in this room to join this critical effort. Together, we can seize this opportunity to connect people with one another, to build trust in our communities, and empower our communities. This is why I'm honored and excited to be leading this effort in Massachusetts Complete Count Committee. I look forward to working with all of you and our colleagues to make sure that Massachusetts has a successful campaign. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Eva. Thank you so much. This is going to be truly an interactive meeting, so we're going to be taking questions in a couple of minutes. I do want to acknowledge that we're joined today by a number of elected officials, legislators in particular. Well, before I get to legislators, the Sheriff of Middlesex County, Peter Katusian, is here. Representative Paul Mark, who is the chair of the House side of the redistricting committee, which will take the good work that we hopefully will do. Senator Jamie Eldridge, who represents areas quite close by here, has been a very strong supporter of this effort. Representative Taki Chan from Quincy, who has also been very supportive. Representative Mindy Dome is here also. We have a list going around. I don't want to leave anybody out. I know you had to introduce some of the local legislation. The mayor's going to help me out.
And we would be remiss without our team, our home team, Representative Jack Lewis, Representative Maria Robinson, and last but not least, Representative Carmen Gentile. And of course, I mentioned, I know our Senator Spilka is not here today, but from her office, Pooja Mehta is also here today.
I know I'm getting signals that I missed some people. Thank you. I apologize. I haven't quite familiarized myself with that. Yes, please. Everybody in the legislature, but I'm grateful. We'll make sure they're introduced before we finish. I was supposed to get a list, but the problem with this hall, it's so beautiful and cavernous that the list is down here, up there, and I'm up here, so I'll get that to make sure that's done. I think at this point we do want to begin some questioning because I know the director has to go. So if we have some microphones going on the floor here for questions. This gentleman over here has a microphone. Why don't you wave so they'll see you?
Hi, good morning. I'm Nicole Crispo from the city of Quincy, and I do have a question. How are we reaching out to our population that is not computer savvy, such as senior citizens?
I think I'll defer to the director. I know he has some specifics on that. The question, I think you all heard it, but I'll repeat it again, is how are we reaching out to those folks who are not computer savvy given the internet opportunity that's out there this year? Director Baylor?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. I will say that the internet responding online is one of 4 ways. So again, you don't have to respond online if you're not comfortable with that. This is the first time we're doing online response. What we're really excited about, what I believe is a game changer, this allows opportunities for partners to host events, to invite people to come down and fill out their census form online with support there, whether that's someone who's translating on the fly, whether that's a census employee, whether that's just a community leader. I joked, I talk about this online thing, and there's 2 different kind of edges of the spectrum. I had a meeting with Mayor Walsh 3-4 years ago, and we joked about online, and he said, how cool would it be, you think about Census Day 2020, that's right around opening day, how great would it be if the Red Sox, between the 3rd and the 4th inning, on the Jumbotron, Big Papi came on and said, hey everyone, take out your smartphone and fill out your census. We can do that this time around. He is a trusted voice to a lot of people, and they'll do that. But I think more importantly, we think about those neighborhoods, and Secretary Galvin talked about that Egyptian community. We need to learn who is their trusted voice. Who do they believe in? Who do they go to for advice? And then work with that person to get them on board as a census ambassador, and then look, could we have some type of event where we bring in laptops, or we invite them to, after church service, to fill out their form, or we provide them a phone that they can go to call the toll-free number to give their responses over the phone. So there's a few different avenues here, but I just think it's such a game changer. When you think about the past, we used to motivate people and then say, go home and sit by your mailbox and wait for your form to show up. Now you can take action right away, and that's what we're excited about.
I might mention, just to supplement what he said, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I believe 20% of the recipients are going to get, in addition to the postcard, people are going to get a postcard telling them that they can do it online. But if I'm correct, from what you've told us, 20% will also be receiving the form as well as the postcard, so they'll have the option right away of doing it on paper. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. And I want to say that those 80% of the nation who get the first package will be the invitation to go online. If we don't get a census response from that particular address by April, early April, like April 3rd, we're going to mail out a form. So everyone will get a form mailed to them if that's the way they choose to fill out the 2020 census.
Just again, as a point of reference, in terms of timeline, the postcards will be going out in March of next year. So in other words, it'll be in advance of April 1st, 2020. And so this process, the internet piece will begin earlier, the follow-up will begin April 1st and thereafter. And as the director already mentioned, then we go back to the door-to-door ultimately, if that is not successful. And that's particularly important, I think, for those of us that are concerned about group quarters and universities and places where the populations are somewhat transitory. Additional questions? Yes.
Hello, my name is Corey Spalding, and I am interested in knowing how minor children who live in two different towns, Framingham and Natick, how would we report our child on the census if we share legal custody?
Very good question.
Thank you. And just for the record, nobody knows. I've checked with the city clerk, I've checked with the city of Cambridge, I've contacted your office, and we cannot find in writing how we should appropriately report this.
Well, thank you again, and we'll have to rectify that. I should have mentioned that we have established a census website for us in Massachusetts, which has gone live. And that might be an excellent start with our website to put information like that out there. So thank you again for the question, Director.
Yeah, a great question. It's one we receive a lot. So the residence criteria that the Census Bureau has published has mentioned that you should be counted where you usually live or stay most of the time. So in a situation where there's shared custody, if the child stays a majority with one parent, that's where they should be counted on a census form. Now, if they split their time equally, what we would suggest is that where was that child staying on April 1st, 2020, because that is the official census day.
Thank you. Additional questions?
Mr. Secretary, Peter Gatusian, Sheriff of Middlesex County, and thank you for your guest. As you know, Mr. Secretary, my father was a city clerk for 30 years in the city of Waltham. Loved the census. This just makes me very happy thinking about how much my father, it was really a patriotic exercise, so thank you for this. I also had the chance, Mr. Bailey, of actually serving as a census worker in 1990, which was great, because as a now politician, it's great because you get to knock doors, but you actually get paid for it, which is really exciting at the same time. I'm here representing a population, Mr. Secretary, that is one that much of society has given up on or suggests doesn't count. Those are those that are incarcerated. Now, no one knows about counts. Counts are really important in running a place of incarceration because it's a safe way to run it. So they're important to us. I know that it is important to the census as well, and I know there's been a lot of discussion about how they should be counted, whether they are in the place where they're staying with us, in our care, custody, and control, or they're to be registered back at their last known address. I know this has been a lot of discussion. I'd like to see if maybe you could update us on how we will count those that are incarcerated, that quite honestly in society do count.
Another great question. So according to the residence criteria for 2020, those that are incarcerated as of April 1st, 2020 will be counted at the location in which they're incarcerated. Now, there's a program that the Census Bureau has, and it's really up to a state if they want to take the path, we have the ability, we won't change the federal count, but if we're given a file of where those incarcerated individuals resided prior to being incarcerated, we can produce a count for state purposes, putting those people back at their place of residence before they're incarcerated. But again, that's a state decision, but it is a tool that is available.
Additional questions? Yes.
Hi, I'm State Representative Tammy Gobert from Acton.
Thank you, first of all.
No problem.
I just introduced, so.
No, I legitimately have a question, that's fine.
thank you.
So one of the concerns I have is about seniors and scams. We know that with the new Medicare cards, there are a lot more seniors who are getting random phone calls that we know are not legitimate and that are fraudulent, and wondering what steps might you be considering to take to make sure that when seniors are responding to a postcard or getting online, that they're also not inadvertently answering a phone call that they shouldn't and giving out information that perhaps can put them into an unsafe situation. Thank you.
Thank you again. I mean, I think that you're bringing up an excellent point, that I think we have to recognize that as maybe we become a little more sophisticated in our census taking, fraudsters are equally sophisticated. And I think we've seen so many examples of people taking advantage of people with some degree of sophistication in their approach about taxes and other things. So I guess the question is, how are we protecting from the Bureau being ripped off, as it were, with identification issues?
Yeah, and it really, to me, boils down to our partnership program. So we have, I think, a team of 9 or 10 here. They're manning the 2 tables back there, partnership specialists, who are your direct resource for the 2020 census. What we need to do is educate every community. We need to educate that elderly community that you raised the concern, to let them know what's on the census and what's not. For instance, we don't ask for social security numbers. We never ask for bank account or credit card information, and we never ask for money. There will be scams when 2020 rolls around. So we want to work together with all of our partners to get the word out about what the census is and what it's not. And if you hear something going on, reach out to us. We'll do the legwork. We'll do all the research. So we've heard from some communities that we've been working with, and we've done events there just to educate those elderly members of that particular community on what the census is going to look like. Some of them are planning call-a-thons. We don't actually call people to gather their information. They can call a toll-free number to provide it. So there's groups that have talked about just having a bunch of phones available and having an event where the seniors can come down and they actually call their information over the phone rather than going online. But there's plenty of opportunities, and we certainly understand that it's not a one-size-fits-all. So we need to work with each community individually, working with the State Complete Count Committee, with the Secretary's office, to make sure we really address their concern. Great question.
And I wouldn't hesitate to add in the value of the councils on aging or senior centers to be able to get this information out, or places at even medical facilities, helping seniors understand what this is all about. And I want to give a big shout out to the Sheriff's Office as well as DA Ryan's office of being able to help seniors understand what is a scam and what is not a scam. So there's definitely going to need to be a lot of outreach and working closely with each individual community and with the resources that they have available where they know where the populations will be.
Any other questions? Yes.
Good morning. My name is Helena Da Silva Hughes. I'm the Executive Director of the Immigrants Assistance Center in New Bedford, and this is actually the 4th time that I've actually been involved with the census. We're involved in 1990, 2000, 2010, and of course 2020. I just wanted to make sure that we know that our city in New Bedford, we lost quite a lot of, even though we did a lot of outreach into the immigrant population, we know that our city definitely has lost money because a lot of people were not counted. But I just wanted to make sure that we utilize the ethnic media as a tool. And when I'm talking about the ethnic media, for example, in New Bedford, we are very fortunate that we have a radio station, WJFD FM. They reach all of the New England states. So it is extremely important that we utilize that radio station, because all the immigrant population, specifically Portuguese, Cape Verdean, and Brazilian population, are listening to that. So I just wanted to make sure that we don't lose that chance to utilize that radio station. Thank you.
Thank you very much. First of all, thank you very much for being here. New Bedford is a city that we're concerned about. It has had in the past a low response rate. One of the things we're doing statewide is try to analyze communities based upon their response rates in previous census efforts. And there are certain criteria that lead us to believe they could be at risk. A high amount of rental housing, vacancy rates, and New Bedford, and like many other cities, are cities that often have those problems. We want to make sure New Bedford gets counted, gets its fair share. You're right about the language issue, and you're right about local media. We in the past have tried to reach out to the local media. We certainly intend to do that again in 2020. We'll be looking for support from the legislature to do that. I want to also mention to you, though, two things related to your question. One is, it's interesting, we're here in Framingham. You mentioned New Bedford as being a significant place for Portuguese speakers. Yes, it is. So is Framingham. And it's really one of the languages that we're most concerned about because it has not only a wide use, but a wide use from different populations, not just recent immigrants, not just from Brazil, but from the Azores, from various other places. So that's one of the languages we're particularly sensitive to and historically have known. Perhaps we've had undercounts. The other piece is the Bureau itself is planning a media outreach, and we've had some conversations with them. I think, is it early April? You're having your...
April 3rd.
On April 3rd, there's going to be in New York, but it's going. We're trying to let groups know about this. There is going to be an open house, as it were, or an opportunity vendor fair, whatever term you want to use, to discuss the media effort by the Federal Bureau as well. And I certainly think that to Portuguese language speaking stations and others, this is an important event. We're happy to provide additional information about it because surely it has to be part of the equation. We have to reach out in languages that people understand to make sure that they're included. That gets back to the critical issue of making sure all of our populations are counted. But thank you so much for being here from New Bedford today. We really appreciate your interest and your effort. Thank you again. Any other questions? Yes.
Amy Warfield, Town Clerk from Burlington. Could somebody talk about one of the continuing questions that we get in our office is in regards to the American Community Survey. That probably causes more questions and more confusion than the census did in 2010, and I can see that the census will in 2020.
Could I just ask you, I mean, we're going to ask that question, but I'm sure the director wants to answer also. What was the specific point of confusion that you experienced?
The questions are, this is very invasive. Why are they asking me when I'm leaving my house? Why are they asking me what my income is? Why are they asking me where I bank? Why are they asking me these kinds of questions? It's much more invasive than the census form is.
It's the content.
Yeah.
Let me just mention what the American Community Survey is, and I'll be happy to defer to the director. The American Community Survey is sort of the interim effort made by the Bureau to keep track of the population over the 10-year period of the census. So it's more like a poll, if you will. It's not meant to be an exact enumeration, but it's a poll that gives a snapshot that allows the Bureau to update the numbers because obviously over a 10-year period things change. There is a lot more detail asked for in that poll than would be asked on an average census form, but it's a very valuable tool. Now having identified, I'll let the director take the dirty work, right? Explain why.
Yeah, great question, and it's another popular question we get. So the American Community Survey, back in Census 2000, 1 out of every 6 households got a long form. The long form is really the characteristics of our nation. Educational attainment, job, salary, housing questions, health questions, transportation questions. And in 2005, the Bureau realized by the time we tabulate all that data after a census and release it, it's out of date. So in 2005, they started the American Community Survey. So now we do a short form only census because we're doing the American Community Survey on a monthly basis. So we have a wonderful staff of, I don't know, probably 50 to 75 field representatives throughout the state of Massachusetts that are out there knocking on doors every day collecting important information for American Community Survey, for current population survey, housing starts, consumer price index. We're always out there knocking on doors. Because we collect that now on a monthly basis, we can release a refreshed set of characteristics for every community, every neighborhood across the United States on a yearly basis. And the majority of federal grants now require the use of ACS data because it is refreshed. There's a great website, and if you give me your card, I'll send you the link at census.gov that tells you why we ask every question. You know, you mentioned what time I leave for work, how long it takes to get there, right? We're not casing your house, I promise you that. I understand though how someone could think about that. But emergency planning services uses that data, transportation services use that data. Every question that's on the census form is being collected for another federal agency, and this website will go through every question and tell you why.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Eva Kennedy. I work with a civil rights organization in Boston. My question is, I understand that there are going to be ways for individuals to complete the census over the phone or online that are not in English or Spanish. My question is, will the initial communication, the postcard, contain instructions for how to do so?
I'm sorry, I missed the end of that. Will the initial mail out?
Will the initial mail out contain instructions for how to complete the census in languages other than English and Spanish?
Yeah, so the mail outs will be in English and Spanish. Included in the first mail out, we're going to have both online and over the phone, there's 12 non-English languages that will be supported. And those 12 languages make up, the vast majority of census responses we typically receive. So in that mail out, there's going to be 12 different toll-free numbers. So the Russian toll-free number, there'll be a paragraph in Russian saying, if you want to provide your information or you have any questions, dial this number. When you dial that number, it's not, press 1 for Russian, press 2 for Spanish. Someone who speaks Russian will answer the phone. So we will have communication in those 12 languages. And then our partnership program, again, it is so important working with the state complete count committees, with the local complete count committees to make sure we are hiring people who speak those languages. We can translate materials and get the word out to make sure the community members understand about the census.
Another question?
Hello, Pat Anderson, Town Clerk in Norwell. Will the census field workers that will be going door to door be required to register with the local police departments with their IDs?
I may have missed. Will it require checking in with police departments? Typically, we don't ask our field workers to do that. We'll do that at our regional census center level, so we'll send mail outs to all the police departments. Ideally, hopefully our complete count committees and the members, the mayors, will reach out to the police departments to let them know. We'll give them the specific timing of when we'll be out there. We'll let them know what our badges look like. We'll let them know that we're collecting information on a smartphone. So we'll definitely share all that information with law enforcement prior to staff going out knocking on doors.
Maybe you can identify what kind of identification the door-to-door workers will have. Will they have
Yeah, it'll have a picture badge that they'll have, and again, they'll also be carrying a census smartphone with some type of logo on the back. But they will have a picture ID, an official census badge.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Michael Weeks. I'm with the Massachusetts Council of Human Service Providers, also called the Providers Council. And we represent an organization that has associations throughout Massachusetts that provide residential care for a number of residents throughout the Commonwealth. And my question, and these residents typically could be people with intellectual developmental disabilities, those with behavioral health, some of our frail elders, veterans, and many others in the Commonwealth. And they live in residences that are throughout the Commonwealth. And I guess my question is to ask if there's going to be any special considerations to reaching out to these organizations, these nonprofits who are very trusted members of the community, to help them to make sure that those who are in residences are also being counted.
Thank you for your question. I'll let the director speak to it, but I want to mention there's a couple of points to your question that need to be addressed. One of them is that we do have, the Bureau, as part of the process, group quarters, so-called. In other words, residential facilities where there are more than one person is separate, is counted in a different way, which is actually helpful to making sure we get a good count, because we can take a list from them of the residents. We're particularly concerned about some of the vulnerable populations that you serve and you describe. I personally think, for instance, in our last effort, we probably had an undercount of very elderly persons. I'm speaking about people in their 90s and 100, not simply because of whatever disabilities they might have, but perhaps they had a caregiver, perhaps they had somebody who didn't understand what the forms were, perhaps they're not able to handle their own affairs, although quite lucid, maybe not able to detail it. So, certainly as part of our approach at the state of Massachusetts, from our Commonwealth's approach, we're going to try to reach out to these people. We're going to be needing the help of your council and your congregate members to try to identify where these populations. It's clear we've had an increase in very elderly residents. We obviously, because we do take good care of our disabled residents in Massachusetts, we have a lot of facilities that service them as well. Some of you earlier mentioned to me some of the opioid recovery victims that we need to be concerned about, and that's certainly something. I'd like to let Jeff respond any way he might have.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And again, the partnership program. So we have to work together. We need your information. We need your input. We need your thoughts on how we need to address it and where. I'm looking at Georgia. She'll get your card if we haven't already been in contact, and we need to have some conversations. But yeah, we need your help. Thank you.
Anybody else? I want to mention we're very fortunate today to have many people from local city and town clerks that are here, or their representatives are here. And I'm very grateful for that, not simply because of their presence, but really it's critical in Massachusetts, at least, because we are sort of this history of being like an Athenian hillside where there are towns and villages and autonomous little communities. I don't know of anyone who knows more about a community than the town and city clerk. They know what's going on, they're familiar with what's happening, so their presence here today is extremely important to our effort, and I want to thank them all for being here, and I want to encourage them to continue to participate. I also think it's important to think about establishing a complete count committee, even if you don't have some of the issues that we've spoken about this morning, because there are different issues in different communities. There are issues perhaps where the language isn't an issue, where immigration isn't an issue, but the type of housing is an issue, or the transitory nature of the population is an issue. Those are all things that are important. Even in communities where there is not any issue that we can identify about the population, sometimes there is resistance. There is, even among those who are American citizens and English speakers, there is a reluctance to provide information, whether it's the most minimal information. Several years ago in a previous census effort, I went out to the town of Shrewsbury. I don't know if there's anybody here from Shrewsbury today, but I went out to the town of Shrewsbury and I met with I don't want to say it was an elderly man's committee. These days I'd probably have to include myself in that kind of list, but they were somewhat hostile, I must tell you. And I suppose I was a little less than patient, and I kept getting these questions that were more, even though I didn't think Shrewsbury at the time had much of an immigrant population issue, they were concerned that we were going to count immigrants. And finally, I guess out of frustration, I said to one of my more hostile questioners amongst this group, because he didn't want to tell the government, he didn't want immigrants answering, and he didn't want to tell the government anything either. And so I finally said to him, I said, do you think all these immigrants are here? And he said, absolutely, they're here. I said, do you think they're in your public school? Oh, I know they're in my public school. Do you think they're riding the buses? Yeah, I'm sure they are. I said, do you want them to pay, or do you want the government to pay, or shall the taxpayers of Shrewsbury pay? He says, I want the government to pay. Great. I said, make sure you answer your census. But I think that's a resistance that is real, and it's fueled in part by the sensitivity of people sharing information. I think so, therefore, it's a challenge to every community, no matter what the indications in the community are of what the nature of the population is. So I'm deeply grateful for all of you being here today from cities and towns. I do suggest, and we'll be happy to help you establish a complete count committee. We want to make sure that all of our communities are complete in their count, not just the ones that are challenging, but all of them. We want to make sure all of Massachusetts is counted. And we've begun today, but we won't be finished and we won't rest until we make sure everyone is counted. Again, I want to thank you. I want to thank Mayor Spicer for her hospitality. I want to thank Director Bueller for being here, Ava Malona for the terrific job she's doing. I want to thank everyone for this effort. Together, we will be successful. We have some refreshments. We want to make sure that everyone doesn't go home famished. So please enjoy the refreshments, and we look forward to speaking with you, working with you over the next year. Thank you so much for your time.